Images are such a huge and crucial part of our visual mode of communication. And it's really hard to give a general overview. There's so much specific information, so much genre history that can really contextualize and allow us to be specific and insightful about the images we see. But nevertheless, I'm going to try to give some general footing for thinking through images as sort of a fundamental design element when we are designing and creating. The first thing I want to talk about is just the one sort of weird technical thing about the quality of images. It's always really important to get really high resolution images when you're working with them, as especially nowadays, sharpness in images is a sign of your credibility. It's a show that you know how to work with images, that you know how to present something professionally. If you look over at the image on the right in this slide, you can see that it actually looks a little bit blurry. And when we sharpen it up, we have the image now at its full resolution, and things do become sharper. It just looks better and more professional overall. Since many screens will have at least a full HD resolution, finding images that are at least 1920 by 1080 pixels is a good start. But screens can vary and be different, but that is going to be a great start. The other thing that you want to do with images is avoid re-editing the same image over and over. Just as with other things like audio and video, you want to make sure that you are saving a project file. So if you are using, for example, the GNU image manipulation program, GIMP, or Photoshop, you would save a .xcf or a .psd file, respectively, instead of just exporting it as a JPEG and then reopening that JPEG, editing it, and exporting it as a JPEG again. This just allows it to be sort of its maximum resolution and quality, and things won't degrade over time. Another key thing to think through with images is their composition. So not their technical composition, but how all of the elements have sort of been laid across on this canvas that is the overall image from top to bottom. So we could spend a millennium talking about ways that we can dissect images, but some of the very common first sort of fundamental ways that I would encourage you to start looking at images more thoughtfully is to think through a bunch of relationships in that image. So one relationship is between the foreground and the background. In here, the image on the right, we have a man silhouetted, and we have a brick building in the background. What's interesting here is that we get sort of shadow in the foreground and we get bright light in the background. You also want to think through what is in and out of focus. It is very popular nowadays for portraits to have what is called shallow depth of field. This means that there is sort of razor sharp focus just like on a person's face, and then pretty much everything else behind them is out of focus. This is what your phone's portrait mode will do. The relationship between what is in and out of focus can be very instructive. It can really help isolate subjects, and it can really help us focus, pun intended, on certain elements of the image and ignore other ones. We can also talk about the content. So in the image on the right, we have a sort of industrial brick building. We have other cues like the sort of industrial crate that this man is holding that will change what we think about when we look at this picture. We can also talk about subject. So this is an abstraction based on a lot of the content of what we think the most important thing in this, or the theme in this, is. So it could be this person in the front. That is the subject of this image. We should also think through the spatial relationships that exist in the image as well. Most of the time, this is important to think through what we call negative space. Negative space is space around the subject that is not holding sort of a lot of content for you to look at. It's sort of what you are going to think of as not important. Negative space is used frequently in things like book design or document design, and is often called white space, to talk about the margins and spacing things out to give things more focus and emphasis in a certain area. So for example, if I have a paragraph of text and I put it in the middle of a page and there's just huge white margins around the entire area, that paragraph is going to feel special because there's so much negative space around it. I have said that this needs all of this separation. However, if it's just a paragraph flowing in a normal page of text, it's not going to have that sort of specialness. So negative space in images functions in sort of a similar way. It helps us understand the situation, and it also brings out things like scale comparisons and sizings. Another key aspect is color and saturation. So saturation is how close to sort of the primary essence of a color the colors are. Oftentimes people will have color, like a primary overriding color. So for example, here we have sort of we have the warm bricks. We have long shadows. So this seems sort of like a sort of evening dusk picture to me, although it could be a sort of more early morning as well. Paying attention to color and association, sort of the overarching color feel of an image, is very important too. The most important thing in guiding others in choosing images is to make sure that they're being intentional about what they choose and not creating clashes between their images and their other content. So things can clash in a few different ways. One is their color. So if we're designing something that has an overall sort of cool color feeling, and we choose an image that has a really, really warm color feel to it, there's going to be potentially a clash there. Similarly, we can create clashes in the types of images we use. So if we have a bunch of photos that we are using throughout this website, and suddenly we use a hand drawing, that's going to be very odd. Unless my topic on that page for some reason is about drawing, there would be no need for that. There's no precedent for it. It would be sort of out of the ordinary. So it's important to think through whether your images are sort of all cohering together, all sort of look like they should go together. You can also get a clash, a much more subtle clash, in thinking through the types of images you're using and whether you're using very literal images or whether you're using things that are more symbolic. So what I mean by this is, say we have a web page about birthday parties that we are going to host for kids at our indoor gym in 2022. Should we have perhaps close-ups of like a party hat, something that is more symbolic of the overall atmosphere? Or should we have a lot of sort of more medium shot pictures of a bunch of kids around a table enjoying pizza? We can blend these, but if we are operating only in one mode and then switch to the other, it will seem out of the ordinary. The last thing is that you can clash based on your subject and the appropriateness for your overall topic and the content of your image. So there can be a dissonance there, depending on the type of image you choose, with what somebody's expecting given the tone and the topic that you're talking about. To put this in action, I want to create a one-slide presentation here about horses. You can find them in Iceland. They're actually everywhere in Iceland. They're very majestic. I could illustrate this slide with this picture of a horse, or I could use this picture of two horses. You can decide in your heart of hearts right now which one you think is better. So many people prefer the first picture of the horse because it is sort of more dynamic. The horse is right up in the frame. The horse is sort of coming out at you. There are others who prefer this picture of the horses because it's set more geographically. There's more a sense of like, oh, these horses look like they could be in Iceland, as the other one looks like it could be anywhere. Some people don't like this picture with the two horses because they feel it is very nice in the way that like hotel art is nice. It's so inoffensive that it's utterly boring. It's important not that you decided the right answer here. It's important though that you are thinking through why you are picking something and why you liked one of those better than the other. Most of the time, there's going to be a lot of wiggle room in the type of images you pick. You want to make sure that you are steering clear of sort of huge missteps, of taking things like your tone not seriously enough. But after that, it's going to be a lot of nuance, and you should be intentional and think through that. But you want to make sure that you are, at the very least, being respectful of your subject, whether that is a happy one or a serious one. Because if you give a presentation about horses in the Civil War and you illustrate it with this, you will instantly lose your entire audience. Your ethical argument, your ethos is gone. No one will trust anything you say anymore, even though you could be saying new amazing things about the way horses were used in the Civil War, because your image is telling them that you don't understand what is appropriate in the visual mode of communication. That's why it's really important to be thoughtful and intentional about your image choice, because it is a way that you can instantly lose an audience. And since many audiences have just sort of a gut feeling about what is and isn't appropriate, or what is or is not a good image, it's often really hard to get them back from that, because it's not a mental process that they are arguing internally saying, oh, well, I can kind of see what they're doing here and why they've chosen this image. They'll just say, nope, you got it wrong, and you instantly lost them. So be very, very intentional about your images. Really deconstruct them. Think through how they are working for you and how they are composed and working internally as well. Because if you lose your audience by putting up images that just don't work, it's going to be impossible to get them back.